it is quite clear that a lot of our early authorities, historians, and even mainstream scholars had understandings of Ya'juj and Ma'juj that frankly, as we are now very clearly can say, are not based upon the Quran and Sunnah. Now again, as I said, one can easily say, oh, but you know what these great scholars say, it's not the Quran and Sunnah, we don't have to believe them. And of course I completely agree with this, and the response is nobody's saying to believe them. However, what is being pointed out is that there's an immense amount of folkloric tradition that even respectable authorities who otherwise are reputable in their fields, they have fallen prey to. And perhaps some of that folkloric content even affected some of our most reputable scholars in some of the most mainstream discourses of our tradition. The famous Abbasid Khalifa al-Wathiq Billah, he saw a dream that greatly disturbed him. He saw in his dream that the great wall that was built by Dhul Qarnayn to block Ya'juj and Ma'juj had been opened up. This dream caused him so much distress, and of course he was the Khalifa. He decided to send an expedition to the ends of the earth and to see how true his dream was. And they told him about this traveler whom history has recorded as Salam at-Tarjuman. What's of interest to us, and in this particular library chat, is the claim of his to have actually come across the wall built by Dhul Qarnayn. He takes it as a given that Dhul Qarnayn is actually Alexander. Salam says that he met people who were guarding the gate and were well aware that behind the wall were Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and that they had seen Ya'juj and Ma'juj. And according to Salam, Ya'juj and Ma'juj were small creatures, 3 foot tall. And other people add here, Ibn al-Tabari, for example, mentions that Ya'juj and Ma'juj, they procreate profusely, and that for every one amongst them, more than 1,000 children are born. They mention stories about Ya'juj and Ma'juj that no one amongst them dies until he has left 1,000 children. For every one that dies, they leave 1,000. And they are semi-humanoid creatures living in the furthest regions of this world. Ibn Hisham actually, again, quite factually writes that Iskandar, Alexander, was the one who blocked Ya'juj and Ma'juj, and he blocked them in the nether regions of the world. Al-Idrisi writes in his famous work on geography, and again quite factually, that Ya'juj and Ma'juj live in the furthest regions of the east. Al-Idrisi, following Ptolemy and before him Aristotle, following these ancient Greek geographers, Al-Idrisi divided the world into 7 iqlim. Iqlim is the Arabic word for climb, which is the Greek word climbs. Ptolemy divided the world into 7 zones or 7 iqlim, and each of these iqlims was further divided into 10 latitudes, if you like. And so of course the furthest of the iqlim is the 7th iqlim, and the furthest of the furthest is the 10th latitude within the 7th iqlim. Al-Idrisi says that Ya'juj and Ma'juj live in the 9th latitude of the 7th iqlim, because the 10th latitude is inhospitable. There is nothing there except barren land and whatnot. By the way, before we move on, just an interesting footnote here. Salam at-Tarjuman's narrative, where he went from city to city until he reached the Great Wall, it has been analyzed by pretty top-notch researchers in our times who are aware of the world in 230 Hijri. And they have pretty meticulously tried to match up the cities he says he has visited with the cities that were existent at the time, and by and large they have found him to be relatively accurate. And if this is the case, then this means that unless he was blatantly lying, he actually saw something that he thought was the wall. And in fact, many researchers in our times have concluded quite convincingly that yes, Salam al-Tarjuman did see a magnificent gate and a very fancy wall, and this was the Jade Gate built by the Chinese emperor, ornately decorated, and it was one of the primary gates of the Silk Road Highway. And of course, given that Salam al-Tarjuman is in a strange land, he's probably the only Muslim, for many, lands around and whatnot. And he's in a culture that's unknown to him, and he wants to find this. It's just human nature. It's not as if, astaghfirullah, he's lying. We don't know too much about him, but everything else seems to be matching up. And it seems as if you follow his route, if you follow where he went, it seems pretty clear that he ended up in the particular city, and researchers have named the city and shown where it was, that he actually did see that particular gate. Now again, it is true to point out this is their interpretation, and they're humans, and we are not obliged to follow or believe them. So the question therefore arises, what does the Quran or Sunnah say about the current existence of Ya'juj and Ma'juj? I accepted a particular hadith that some scholars, such as Shaykh al-Albani, have made authentic, in which it is mentioned that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are trapped behind a wall, and they're digging every single day until they are about to reach the end, and then they're told to go back until finally a day will come when they will break free. There's one hadith like this, that's it. And back in the, that era when I did my preliminary research, I did not look at the chain of this hadith, and I simply followed a great scholar of hadith by the name of Shaykh al-Albani, and he said it is authentic. I said, khalas, it is authentic or not. And so I followed him, and I said, we believe in it because the Prophet ﷺ said so. Because if the hadith is authentic, we believe in it. I realized that in fact this hadith has quite a number of problems in it, and many of our mainstream ulama, including Ibn Kathir, and in our times as well, a whole host of ulama have problematized this hadith. Actually, it is a da'if hadith. So if you remove this hadith from the picture, then there is nothing explicit that Ya'juj and Ma'juj are currently in existence and trapped behind a wall, and therefore we don't have to believe this. We are not obliged to believe that they're currently trapped behind a wall. The opinion that I hold is that the Sharia does not require us to believe in Ya'juj and Ma'juj currently being trapped behind a wall at this point in time, and that their release is going to be one of the signs of the Day of Judgment, and Allah will send a group like them, not necessarily them obviously, but like them, just like our Prophet ﷺ said in the famous hadith in Sahih Muslim, that the Day of Judgment will not occur except when the Romans are at the pinnacle of civilization, except that the Romans have dominated the world. Pretty much everybody understands that this is a reference to Western civilization, that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about current, if you like, Western civilization. And that's a valid extrapolation. Now, modern Western civilization are neither the biological, right, nor even the technical inheritors, i.e. they don't say they are Romans, right? So they neither call themselves Romans, nor are they the biological descendants, each and every one of them. And yet there is a heritage that they've inherited, and they do view themselves as being the tradition, even if they're not using the term Roman. So in the same way, if the Prophet ﷺ can call Western civilization Romans, so too a group of people that are acting like the original Ya'juj and Ma'juj, a group of people that are just as barbaric and just as evil as the original Ya'juj and Ma'juj, they shall come at one point in time, or they might even have come according to one interpretation, and that group is Ya'juj and Ma'juj. It doesn't have to be their actual biological descendants trapped behind a wall. It doesn't have to be the exact same civilization, just like Western civilization is not the exact same as the Romans. So this is my understanding of Ya'juj and Ma'juj.